Hey, it's Anthony and Tucker with Land Title. We came to bring you your economic update for the third quarter.
All righty, so we got some really good data that just came in. What we're looking at right now is we're really looking at our GDP, and what we're kind of looking at in that top graph is really just the last 10 years or so, 10, 16 years. No, 10 to 12, years. And you can really see just what a nice pace we've had even before COVID. And of course, we see that gray line is COVID and the small recession we had. And you can see how we've continued to grow our GDP at a really, really stable rate. Then on the lower graph, what you can see is how that GDP growth has changed over time.
Right.
And
basically,
that's
this
really
last
amazing.
decade has been the one where we've had skyrocketing growth in some ways. And, post-pandemic, it really shows you how much that's really changed and how a lot of that was really due to inflation in some ways. So the changing velocity of our growth pattern, we're trying to get that under control. And that's really what the Fed's doing by changing rates. So really, why do you guys all care? That's why we do this, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the Fed rate versus the 10-year T-bill and kind of how that changes things. That really affects interest rates the most. Well, those Fed rates have been sitting pretty high, right?
Yeah, they have been sitting high, and the 10-year Treasury note tracks separately from the 10-year. The 10-year Treasury note tracks separate from the Fed rate, right? That Fed rate is that short-term, really, variable interest rate, credit cards, overnight lending, bank to bank, short-term loans. That's really your Fed funds rate generally.
Yep.
And that's why we look at the 10-year Treasury notes, because that's the best indicator for your long-term debt. And that long-term debt is what we use for our mortgages and things of that nature, right? So we're looking at the 10-year Treasury note. As we saw it jump back up a little bit, that's not a good sign for mortgage rates. That's where those mortgage rates went back up a little bit after that Fed funds cut. Mortgage rates went back up. So that's really the important piece to understand here is, if you're going to follow anything in there for mortgage rates, follow the 10-year Treasury note, because what happens today will reflect tomorrow in the mortgage rates.
Okay, so this is the 10-year versus the 2-year, right? So this is really important because the 10-year, more interest rates. 2-year, think car loans or HELOCs or those kind of things. But when the yield curve gets inverted, which means the 10-year is actually more expensive than the 2-year. Cheaper than the 2-year, sorry.
Yeah.
Cheaper than the 2-year, which we've had for the last basically 2 years. That is a really big indicator of recession. So you can always see over time, basically every one of those gray bars is superseded by an inverted in the yield curve. So what the Fed thinks that they're doing is they're creating this sort of soft landing because they're really tracking things like unemployment rate more so than inflation. So this Fed is trying to change the way that the rules have been written.
Yeah, and this Fed, and just from a historical perspective,
Yeah.
Jerome Powell is not the person anyone thought when he became Fed chair to go, you know what, we're going to look at the worker. We're going to look at wages. We're going to look at unemployment and not purely focus on the inflationary side of the economy. And that's where the Feds have really been their focus up until Jerome Powell took charge. So
and Jerome Powell's looking at a lot of things. So let's look at all the things
he's a lot different.
Number one, personal saving rates are a really good indicator of whether or not we're heading into recessions or not. We were dropping off a cliff after all the stimulus, and we really have stabilized back out at just below 5%. And these are really good numbers because, look at 2005 to 2008, right? Savings was in the tank. Right now, savings rates have been very stable. Now, you don't want to see 30% savings rates, right? That's what happens when you print money and you hand checks to people, and then they can't spend it. So this is really a good sign to see, things being very stable. I think that's another indicator of soft landing, which is what they're looking at.
And it seems like it's lining up there.
Totally. Look at unemployment rate. So Tucker, talk a little bit about this.
So absolutely. So what's really interesting is here in Boulder County, and we're right now looking at that green line for Boulder County, we've always been historically much lower than the nation, let alone even Colorado. But even over the last year or so, 2 years, we've been seeing them kind of converge and get a little closer together. And you can really see that on the lower graph here.
Makes me nervous.
Yeah, it's also, it just shows how affordability of housing and other political and situations come into play. If you look at Boulder County, hey, we're not that much lower unemployment anymore. We're starting to creep up there as well and getting closer to that national and state level.
Well, it worries me because Boulder County stereotypically has higher paying jobs, higher end jobs, tech jobs, all this aerospace, all the things that are here, right?
Professional
services. And those things are what truly cuts deep in employment when those things get cut. So that's why Boulder generally has more employment rate, because the things that we all care about the most in keeping these really high paying jobs seeming to be Boulder County, right? They don't usually take hits as bad. So the fact that we're kind of converging with the national unemployment rate, that gives me a little bit of cause for concern. But
and that might be a factor, and this is conjecture here. We don't know for sure, but that might be also played into by the large tech companies, which love cheap debt.
Totally.
They love that cheap debt. They thrive on that cheap money because they're always in expansion mode. Well, with the high interest rates, there's also been some more layoffs. Some, I'm sure you've seen in the national news. There's been more issues regarding tech companies, and we're tech heavy in Boulder. Right. So maybe we got disproportionately hit with some of those layoffs. Could be the case. What happened?
All right, so this really ties to per capita income, which the Fed doesn't care too much about, but it's very important for you to understand this, to understand the real estate situation here. So basically, the average income or median income is what we're tracking here per capita. We're talking, whatever, 80,000 or so nationwide, maybe a little bit less than that. Boulder County and the state data is a little bit behind, which is why you don't see this. But state data generally is way above 20% or so above the nation. Boulder County being obviously much, much higher than that. But here you are in a place where, let's just say it's 40% higher, right? If Boulder County median income is 40% higher than the nation, but housing prices are more than double, it just goes to show you how that pinch in housing is really, really getting affected by wages in Boulder County, right?
Because the housing costs went up faster than our per capita median income.
Exactly.
So it's getting further away.
It is. Now, let's talk real estate, because that's why you all came here. There's your 30,000 foot view on the economy from your not so economist, Tucker Nathan.
Thank you, Nar.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So this is NAR stats. I'd give you a newer one, but they don't have it out yet. Basically, that's kind of a big picture view. Yeah. You can always come back to that. Let's talk what that means. So housing price index is basically the affordability of housing, right? And you can see, just like the Fed was hoping, they stalled out those crazy increases in prices in housing because of all that cheap money. And over the last 2.5 years, it's effectively done its job. Now, as a nation, housing is still rising just a little bit. That would be the blue line. The median for the U.S. has actually come down a little bit. The average for the U.S. housing prices have really stalled out. So that tells you that by the median slowing down, that's what the median income workers can afford. It's actually brought housing prices down just ever so slightly, which is why they're ready to turn on money again.
Yeah, and that's why they're turning it on slowly.
Right. We're not going to let the floodgates.
We're not going back down to zero for our Fed funds rate overnight, like we do in big financial crises.
Exactly.
All right, so this one right here, this is an interesting graph. And really what we were looking at here is we're looking at the median sales price going in the red, going across left to right. But then we're also looking at those blue bars showing the existing home sales. And this is what's interesting here is it's because it's by month. And we can really see how low the volume is and how tied to rates that volume is.
Exactly.
And, and just even, anecdotally, just watching what happened from August to September and the most recent stats when we had that rate drop in September, we had a really big jump in pendings. So it was a good sign to see that's elastic and that it's moving very well together. So as rates drop, we're going to see housing, just overall transactions go up and the volume go up as well. But this is where you can really see that the median sales price of existing homes kind of doing that up and down. And that's the seasonality with the weather patterns, right? Mm-hmm. That's why we have that up and down, up and down. And what we've seen is it's even gotten more pronounced over time, where if we look back 10 years ago to 2015, it was much more muted. We're seeing much larger swings. And so that kind of plays into what is that shopping cycle like for clients nationally.
Right.
This isn't even locally. This isn't even locally. This is nationally. Looking at the peaks and the valleys, we really see how the cycle works now from national buyers. So if you have buyers coming from out of state, be aware of the time of year that they're looking, because they're being influenced nationally by this cyclical nature of both short cycles and long cycles.
Yeah. All right. So that all kind of plays into what the Fed's doing and their kind of outlook long term.
This right here is the best information if you want a crystal ball. This is the best. This is the closest thing we have to a crystal ball for Fed's rates because it's from the Fed.
Yeah. So there's 19 Fed members. They all vote. They all say where they think rates are going to be
at the end of the year.
At the end of the year. Well, actually, it was mid-year. This is when they put this out.
Yeah, but I was thinking at the end of each year.
At the end of each year. So this is the end of 24, the end of 25, the end of 26. So you can really see Fed rates right now are between 4.75 and 5. So they're actually at the bottom of the projections for 24. Now, could we go lower? Absolutely. There's still an opportunity for a quarter point cut in November and December. But in all reality, we've already got to where the projections are. But you're going to see interest rates decline over the next 3 years because in 25 and in 26 by the end of the year, they really do. The vast majority of the Fed says that the economy is going to be slowing, and they're going to start letting money slowly back into the economy, almost 1% per year. So over the course of time, it could correlate. I say could because it won't directly correlate, but it could correlate to lower interest rates every year for the next couple of years.
Yeah, and generally it should go that direction without a another hand grenade getting thrown into the economy or
Exactly.
another pandemic or something.
All right, so talk about mortgage rates for a minute.
Yeah, so mortgage rates are really, as we all know, they're very fickle and they change super quick overnight. That's what makes mortgage rates hard, especially when you're out shopping them. Hey, one rate yesterday to today could be totally different. It could be a quarter point swing sometimes.
Well, we actually saw those kind of swings for like the last 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
And they've been rising that fast. So as much as this time last year, we saw those huge rising rates, same thing happened this year. It's very seasonal and cyclical in some ways. So don't panic. The rates are at nearly 7 today when they were at 3 weeks ago, they were at sub 6.
Mm-hmm. And then you can see here, so that number of houses sold is a little bit lagging on the Fed data. But what we really see here is just how tied together interest rates are for a 30-year fixed loan to housing sales. I mean, they go directly hand in hand is what we can see here.
We're $1 million a year drop off from where we were previously, right?
And then we went up several points. So you can just see how much that affects it. And you can really see that big V there, right when we shut down the economy. Then we see that spike afterwards in those low rates.
For real.
That's what Fed, if there's one slide I take that's to a sophisticated buyer or seller of what's going on and why, hey, it might be hard to sell your house right now, or hey, you might not get what you thought you could 2 years ago for it. This right here shows why, right? Interest rates go up, we have less sales.
Exactly.
And that slows down the overall market, slows down the competition of purchasing, which then stabilizes prices, which was the point by the Fed.
Totally. Okay, so let's look at fixed mortgage rates. You can see just historically kind of where they've been. So when people talk a little bit about it, 6.44% is when I pulled this. But when you look back, really 6.4%, it's taken a couple of decades since we've had those. So that's why the shock factor is so big. But in all reality, previous to those 2 decades, interest rates were higher than this for 40 years.
Yeah.
Right.
And so
basically since post World War II, when money was cheap because we were rebuilding and refueling the economy. So this is a really interesting slide to look at and give some people some perspective that, rates at 6% aren't the end of the world, and they probably will be for a while as they slowly trickle down. In past, you could see it almost took a decade every time for us to have to lower interest rates by almost 1%. So It really takes a while. And that's why we're not all like, hey, just wait to buy till later, because it's just not going to happen, right? And the cost of housing is going to continue to rise over that time.
Now it'll be more muted in that rise, which would be related, once again, to how fast rates change, is how fast appreciation will change.
Totally.
They're completely tied together. And then the lower graph, we can just see the shorter term. We just see the short term of, hey, we were really used to cheap money, right?
Totally.
All of us.
Exactly.
My entire adult life, I have had cheap options for money. A lot of us out there in the real estate industry, since we've been professionals, we've only known cheap rates. And so this is where that 6%, 7% shock comes in, is we've never experienced it in our lifetimes. It almost got up to 8% at one point.
Right.
We've never had to experience this in our professional lives. So this is where a lot of that shock and a lot of our first-time home buyers, right? My demographic, Anthony's demographic, mid-30s, late 20s, mid-30s, first-time home buyers, we've only known cheap money. So that's just one of those things to keep in the back of your mind when you're working with younger folks or middle-aged, or not middle-aged, but folks in their 30s and younger.
Yeah, most of your millennials, first-time home buyers.
They've never experienced this high interest rate environment, so they don't know any different.
Okay, we already talked about this one. Let's keep going because we have a lot to cover. All right, U.S. supply of existing homes. This is one where, we got month supply of inventory in the red, and we've got total homes in blue here. And you can see over time really what we got used to and what we've experienced in years past. So really 2 million homes was somewhere around what you would consider probably a pretty comfortable level for the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
4 months of inventory or so, 5 months of inventory maybe, right? And then we're sitting in that time where, we had 2.2 million homes. This is like all the way into the 2000s. Then we went through a huge housing crisis, and all we did was not build enough and then chip away at existing inventory all the way till we hit the pandemic. And then we gave money away, and it made the housing supply way worse, right?
Yeah.
So you put a lot of people in homes. And here we are in a position where we've been kind of building back up. Now, no one in their short-term memory remembers these times where we had inventory, where the month supply was high enough, where it felt like a balanced market. So the good thing here is you can show some historical trends about, look, this is a pretty normal environment that we're sitting in today, right now. We don't have enough inventory out there on the market. So we still need to be pro-builder in so many ways because there's not enough housing stock in the marketplace for basically those Gen Zers, those millennials, those first-time home buyers to enter the marketplace.
Yeah.
So maybe this is some historical perspective to have conversations. That's really what the whole reason I put this in here.
Yeah. And so now we're looking to look at our new homes for sales, right? So this is our new homes, our builder products coming out. And you can really see what's happened with them, especially in the last couple of years. But you can see how right before that nice blue line of new home sales housing inventory, that nice blue line before the 07, 08, 09 crash,
yeah,
look how high that was. That was the inventory Anthony was just talking about that we built up. That was wonderful. And then for the last decade, we've been chipping away, actually 15 years really, we've been chipping away from that.
We did.
And then we got to this point where we go, we don't have enough. And then builders started picking it back up.
And that was
pandemic hit. Then they built more, and then rates changed. And now they're kind of stagnating because they need to keep building, but their product may not be moving fast enough because it's always more expensive. It's brand new. Costs to build new is much more expensive than existing
exactly.
product.
And that's very common in the builder world for that to sit a little bit longer.
But you can see that month supply of inventory. So there's some great deals out there with builders right now. And builders, I know, and builders really want to move those products because then they can start building their next one. So help our builder friends out. They have some killer teasers.
Totally.
Killer teaser rates.
Here's another slide with new home sales. You can see that red line is very similar to the last graph, right? So once we look at blue being the existing homes for sale, so you can compare existing homes to existing home month supply of inventory, and you see how much lower that was. That red line was the median home sale price, so that tends to track with that. And the median home sale price is stalled out as home sales have slowed down, and as month supply of inventory is kind of stagnant as well. So everything being considered, let's keep moving on a little bit.
Yep.
The month supply of inventory in new housing, you saw it on the last slide, so we're going to skip this one. But the supply of active listings in the marketplace. So this is a really interesting one. We got U.S. compared to Colorado compared to Boulder County. And obviously Boulder County is a little bit more muted down there at the bottom. Also fraction of the
much smaller, yeah.
Yep. But the big thing here is if you compare Colorado to the U.S., Colorado has seen huge swings in inventory where a lot of the country has not. So this is directly correlated to the cost of housing here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we can see those supply of actives really changing, especially in Colorado versus the nation.
Yep.
Because we appreciate a lot faster, over the last decade than a lot of the areas in the Midwest or even upper Northeast and even the South. Yeah. So the western region of the country really did accelerate a lot faster.
Yeah, we talk about it quite a bit. Check out a lot of the other stuff.
Yeah.
We talk about it all the time. But new listings coming to market, you can see that sellers still usually have to sell, right? So red being Colorado, blue being the U.S., you can see how much more muted the U.S. has been over the last couple of years. But in Colorado, it hasn't slowed down as much, but that doesn't mean that they're all selling as much, right? We have new homes coming to market every month, and it just is slow and steady. In Boulder County, you can see it at the bottom. If you really compared the percentage change there, there's a lot less coming to market and people are sitting on their hands. And that comes with the cost of housing in an area, right? Yeah. When you have more affluent buyers and sellers, and you have sellers who are willing to not really take a haircut because they don't have to sell, they just tend to wait a little bit longer. Yeah. So you're going to see that trend kind of take place
going forward.
What about buyers?
And this is the big thing is it's about rates, right? It's all about rates right now. And this is where we can really see for the United States in that blue line, it's starting to dip, relative adjusted for Colorado compared to Colorado. And Colorado's really remained stable because we still have such a shortage in housing. We're still remaining stable in our pending sales. We still have folks wanting to buy homes, move into homes here in Colorado,
right?
Which is a really good sign. And it's really kind of flatlining, whereas the nation's been having a little bit more of a dramatic decrease. They got a little bit higher than us, and then they fell a little bit faster than us.
Right.
So instead of us going up and down, we've really just been consistently flat, really since about the beginning of 24.
Yeah, it's true. I mean,
and then Boulder County, pretty much
it
flatline. It's Boulder County. It doesn't change too much.
No. All right. So housing inventory days on, or this is like your median days on market.
Yeah.
I think this one's important to look at because when I talk about our Boulder stats and you talk about our Boulder stats all the time, everybody's panicking a little bit because it's risen so fast. Well, it's honestly right in line with the nation. It's very normalized. If you look over the history of the last 8 years that this shows, you can see that 55 days in MLS as a median is really not bad at all. And the median in Boulder County is still way lower than that. The average that we talk about for a detached home right now is 44 last month. So we're still in a way better place, even if we have seen the inventory rise, even if we have seen a lot of these things that feel fairly negative. I mean, housing in Boulder County or in Colorado is just such a stable investment.
Yeah. All right. So month supply, this is for existing home sales for the nation. We kind of already covered this a little bit, but we're sitting at 4.2s. And this is actually really good data.
This is way better.
Is our price per square foot. And this is a way to help delineate between what's being bought and sold. Hey, right now in the current market in Boulder County, we have more things under 800,000 selling than we did, a couple of years ago. And we have less above $1 million selling than we did a couple of years ago, right? The markets are acting different. The cheaper products going faster, the more expensive products taking longer because of the cost of money.
Exactly.
Now let's look at when we take that mindset, how do we compare this to the nation? And this is what's really interesting is Boulder's on the top with the red. Our price per square foot has actually come down a little bit. And that's in part, between a few really high-end luxury sales here locally because it's a smaller sample size, which changes those price per square foots. Some of those brand new builds that come out that are the custom specs, for $3 million. But then we look at that compared to the rest of the country, we're dramatically higher in our price per square foot. And what's interesting with us is we have much more variability in our price per square foot for the median because we're a smaller market. And so there's, one or two really big sales will shift us a little bit more each month.
Not just that, but just that difference between the luxury market and the normal market. I mean, it's
And
just
the
a
housing
big
stock.
part of what we do, right? The housing stock for luxury is so much more of the market share that it does affect things, right? And so when you look at that compared to even Denver Metro is much more stable too. It follows a lot of those national trends. It follows a lot of the state trends. I just think you can get a lot out of this because it's going to help make better decisions over time. If you look at median days, this is what I was talking about. We're very much in line with the median of the U.S. That's our blue line. Colorado actually above in some ways. Boulder County right in line with what we saw nationally. I think this is just good to see side by side where we are stacking up against the U.S. because the Fed and everybody else is making decisions on the U.S. as a whole, not necessarily on our local markets. So we definitely are affected in different ways.
And this right here is our baseline days on market. And this is where you can really see for our year-over-year change of how much things are moving for our days on market.
Boy, it's moved around a lot.
It's been jumping back and forth compared to last year to this year. And, I think it's, also based on national news. We get a good news cycle for real estate. Things pick up. And then next year when we're not getting that same news cycle in that same month, it slows down a bit. But this is where we're really looking at this is with we're dropping a little bit in Boulder County down below that year-over-year median. So that's a good sign for the county. Now, when we look at this in the United States, it's pretty much a flat line in year-over-year for the country. But then when we look at Colorado is slowing faster than Boulder County. So that's one thing to kind of take away from this is Boulder County is going a little bit faster than it was last year for our median days on market, whereas Colorado as a whole is starting to creep up and go above year over year.
Which is really being pulled majorly by the metro areas, right? Those metro areas have been slowing more because they finally have some more inventory and it's finally slowed down. Boulder County really got their excess of inventory a year earlier than almost everybody else.
Yeah, and it's also part of it's the fire danger and how much harder it is to get those homes in the rest of the state that are either rural fire danger or mountain fire danger. And that is going to make an impact down the road. It's going to continue to play into it. All right.
So Tucker talked a little bit about this a little earlier. The Western region, because of all that price appreciation that they saw over the pandemic, has been substantially slower since.
Mm-hmm.
Higher prices obviously mean less people can afford it. So it means less buyers out there to buy it, right? So you can see the difference between that and the United States. It really hasn't changed much. We've seen pickups in our showing traffic a little bit, but not enough to really move the needle.
Yeah.
So that's kind of problematic.
And you can see where prices were 2 years ago and then where they are now. It's much higher. So this is fun because we're right now looking at the faintest line is 2020. The next one, the more purple faint line is 21, 22, a little bit deeper purple. And then 23 is that really nice solid dark line. And then 24 current year. That's where we're at. So you can really see how stable we're. I don't know why I'm pointing at you guys can't see that. Oh, knucklehead of shove doing video. But you can see right now of where our weekly average of showings is actually doing okay right now, considering where we're at. It's, we're seeing a small decrease in our showings, but it's really flatlining. And that's what we like to see is right now, given everything going on, showings are flatlining right now.
This is your light given that we're going
and we're going into fall, right? And we're still seeing this number. Whereas if you look at, some of the years past, we start seeing that drop off a little bit quicker. And then obviously you can see right at the end of, Halloween and then again, when we hit November for Thanksgiving,
and then
drops.
Christmas
and then,
week as well.
The holidays, we can see how those things drop. So use this information. If you're taking a listing to market and they have to sell this year or at least put it on the market this year, try to get it going as fast as you can. Try to get under contract before Thanksgiving. If that doesn't work, be under contract before the holidays because you can just see how buyers are not viewing homes during those periods.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so we got a couple, and we're going to fly through these because we've taken way too much of your time today. But
I disagree. I think they love us.
Or you've just turned us off already. It's fine. All right, quarterly data. You can see here price appreciation for the nation. The top 20%, below 20%, those are the colors. Colorado's still floating around right in the middle there. You can see we've gone up 1/4 percentage point. So very, very stable real estate market here. Over the course of the previous year, we had 3.5%, just like we told you guys for a while. The weird thing about this one is the dark areas, look at the areas that have appreciated the fastest. It's the places that did not appreciate during the pandemic because they were more stable environments, much less people purchasing during those times.
Look at West Virginia. They're at 12% increase year over year.
That?
I mean, it's also West Virginia, but
I know, but Kansas went up 7.5%. Nevada went up 7.5%.
It's so much more affordable. Anecdotally, we hear this on the closing table and on our side. People are leaving the state sometimes. Hey, we need to retire somewhere cheaper. My dad's an example. I need to retire somewhere cheaper than Boulder.
Let's move to Wyoming or Kansas or Nevada,
he's still figuring that one out.
No, I don't know where he's going to move. But basically, that's the trend. The reason that all of the cost of money things have really affected the West and the showing traffic is lower, this slide is a perfect example.
Yeah.
It tells you just how much more expensive the West has gotten. Colorado is not near the top right now. There are other states that have appreciated faster than us. And I had a slide in our podcast we did the other day that showed a 40-year view. And the 40-year view, it's like the entire West was 600 to 800% increase. Colorado sitting right in the mix there. But it's bizarre to watch the change.
And so looking at our current slide, though, this is since 1991.
Yeah.
What was the area with the fastest appreciation? Well, it's West Virginia year over year. What's the lowest one on this? Mississippi and then West Virginia.
For real.
Followed by Arkansas.
There's a reason that they're appreciating
Look at the areas
fastest.
growing really fast right now just because they're historically cheaper.
600% now. They've outpaced Colorado, which hasn't happened in so long. And then Utah, 604.
Utah's
and
on
those
the
are
map.
the two.
Utah's a fun state.
Boom. There you go.
Utah's a lot of fun.
All right. So this is previous 5 years. You can use this if you need it. It's really here for you. If you get into the stuff from CAR, we always put this out for you. There's a few takeaways here, but we're going to dig into each one of them. So let's look at this. Colorado housing supply. You can kind of see where we've been trending, 35,000 units. It's up quite a bit from this time last year by 22%. 4 months of inventory like we talked about.
Keep going.
Oh, sorry.
Housing demand.
I
was like, that's the same slide.
All right, housing demand.
Housing demand. Now, this is where we've seen the slack given in our market is on the demand side. It's not our issue in the pandemic was supply. Demand was amazing. It's now flipped. We're getting supply slowly, but we're getting it. We're building it.
Yep.
Now we're starting to be chipping away a little bit here as we go into the fall across the state. But this is where we can see our buyer demand has started to really slow. And that is what we've all felt here in the real estate industry over the last few years. And we can really see where it was at the beginning of 22, right? That was the peak, frothy, craziest part of the market. And then it fell off a cliff. And then you can see how it jumps every spring. But the last 2 springs, they keep getting more muted, right?
The line list price is down to 20% from 60%. It just goes to show you the swing and just how drastic that can take place.
Yeah. And now
This is the demand, right?
Yeah.
Same slide, kind of showing you similar stuff. Now, this one is one where you talk about the health of the market. It's called the lender report, but essentially showing REOs, short sales, all that stuff. The biggest takeaways here are the fact that there were 9 REOs all month last month and 16 short sales. Were they up? Sure. They went from 8 to 16. It could be a monthly thing. Yes, there are delinquencies starting to pile up a little bit more than they have, but nowhere to the point where they're going to end up on this report. So
we're much more stabilized compared to where we were in 07 and 08. And that's that's a huge piece.
Yeah.
It's like we're just so much more stable. So even if we do have a little slack in prices, we're not seeing people underwater like they were.
Exactly.
And that's when we saw people walking away, killing neighborhoods of, half a neighborhood walking away because they're all underwater. So we're not going to see that this time around, which is really going to keep the capital and the banks able to lend going forward because now they're not taking huge losses either.
Exactly. So
sorry, that's a little bit more.
Yeah, it's
a little more detailed.
But I mean, that's kind of what we're here for anyway.
Okay.
So let's talk about Colorado as a whole. You can see some of the changes. Like we talked about, a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. Those rates came down. Buyers went to marketplace. 31% increase in under contracts last month. That was a really big, really exciting thing to see. It may not stay there with rates at 7% today, but we are at least seeing buyers on the sideline ready to go. They put in mortgage applications. So as rates start to dip and get a little more maybe in their realm of what they're comfortable with, they'll start pulling the trigger. I like to see that. The biggest thing that you're combating locally in Colorado is the average sales price last month, year over year, was down 3.4%. But when you look at it year to date, it's not down. It's actually up.
Yeah, year to date, it's better.
You've got to have something to show people when they go, what do you mean housing prices dropped by 3.5%? You kind of got to curb your enthusiasm.
That's why that year to date is huge. It helps really kind of stabilize and show where we are and not just, hey, we had a unique amount of composition of sales.
All right, let's talk about a townhouse attached because this one
is
different
much different than detached. Actually, not a lot different. What we can see here is solds are down 14% across the state. New listings are still up. Pendings under contracts are still up, but much less compared to the single family detached product. Sales price, once again, pretty similar. Dropping, but then when we look at our year to date, that only went up 1.8 versus 3.4 in the last slide.
Yeah.
So, and you can really see how much this condo market's going to continue to kind of stagnate here, especially while there's a high cost of money, lower demand,
and a lot of hurdles.
Yeah. It's only going to be getting harder of the non-warrantability issue of condos right now, and I've been hearing that all over the place from lenders, from agents.
Yep.
If you're taking on a listing that's a condo, see if you can get a lender friend to do the condo questionnaire up front for you so you know how to market it and you know how to get the right offers.
All right, so go under contracts. This kind of shows you both side by side, but you can see that change in the stagnation in the condo market, and you can see just that bump and increase in buyer behavior in the detached market that normally seasonally you wouldn't see.
Yeah.
The average sales prices are kind of reflecting this. They usually lag by a few months, but when you talk about that drop in detached single-family home price, it really is not going to stick around. So get your buyers out and tell them this is the best time to go buy a house. Whether you're a lender or a realtor or you're in any of this part, go get real estate. This is a really short-lived window that may not last very long in this kind of reduced market. The attached product could suffer for a little bit longer. I really think it's at least going to be a 2-year window. Where
I think it's going to be an issue of insurance.
I do too.
Until there's some different insurance changes to insurance for the wind and hail deductible of 5%, which is the Fannie Mae
2 years to figure that out, though.
At minimum.
Yeah.
Minimum
maybe
2 years.
5. Right?
It might take longer or it might not get solved.
I guess there's always that.
And then there's going to be a lot more higher rates for condos, which is going to then further decrease their attractiveness as a buyer.
Yeah. Just keep in mind, like the price of detached housing isn't just going to fall off, or attached housing.
No,
right?
It's not going to fall off.
It's just going to be stagnant, I think.
And it never has appreciated as fast as attached or detached. Detached is always appreciated faster than attached, and I think we're going to continue to see that change increase, that percent change increase.
All right, so percentage list sale price. You can see it really is very similar to last year, just a little bit reduced. Actually, last month is perfectly even across the board. But you can see we're very similar to years past. We just aren't in the pandemic years anymore. If you need that slide, it's there for you. This is days on market locally in Colorado. Another one, same thing like we've talked about, right? Do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah. So this is an interesting. So we have 2 different things going on here. On the top part, we have our change in real GDP. So this means adjusted for inflation. So as we saw right at the beginning, it was that beautiful, nice, steep line going up of, increasing GDP. But when we factor in inflation over the last few years, where are we really at? And that's where we can see is we've actually been trickling down a little bit, really since about mid 22, which was when rates changed, that we've actually been changing. Our GDP's actually been going down in real dollars, but it goes up because of the inflation was so high. Everything costs more.
Yeah, exactly.
Jobs are offering more. Everything's going up, and there's a lag effect there, of course. But you can really see how we've gone down in our real GDP. So that means
real GDP growth.
GDP growth has come down, and it just shows that we're starting to really slow. If you took out inflation, if we put everything the same,
also slowing employment, right? That's what the bottom graph shows. It shows how correlated they are.
And this is the thing that Jerome Powell is really focusing on is unemployment. GDP is part of it, but not as much. But they're really focusing on unemployment, unemployment rates, job numbers.
Because we don't want to lose employment in the economy. That's how you see depressions. And that's what he's really trying to avoid.
Yeah, and that's the soft landing, is keeping that low while inflation is still manageable.
Here's the slide that shows the inflation. You can see it here. This is also from the Fed report. That's why it's all in here. Tucker's just talking ahead, which is great because it means he knows what he's talking about.
Leading into it.
All right, but you can see it's a little higher than the Fed would like. They really want to see what we saw back in 2013 through 2019. No big deal, but it kind of is what it is. All right, thank you for joining us today. This is our last slide. We appreciate you hanging in there with us for 36 minutes. But
who's counting?
Who's counting?
It's so much fun with us. No, we really do appreciate all of you out there listening to this, and we're here to be a resource for you. And honestly, we just want to help you out and be a partner of you on the title side. And also, we love talking stats, so we'll talk to you anytime about that.
Thanks for joining us today. Catch you next time.
Happy Halloween, everybody. Thanks.
Bye.